Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for the pre-snap at Game On Wisconsin. Alex Strouf, welcome to the pre-snap at Game On Wisconsin. First of all, sir, thank you for joining us on what used to be your show.
Yeah.
How you doing?
I'm great, MJ. Good to see you, buddy. You've taken this thing. You've ran with it. I love it. Mid-afternoon games. I talked about this a lot on the pre-snap last year. I love the 3:25 time slot.
Yes.
I get to watch the Browns beat up on the Vikings. I get to watch the Bears and the Lions beat up on each other before I watch Aaron Rodgers beat up the Steelers like it's Super Bowl 45 again. I love Sundays.
Yes, we love Sundays. And Alex, before we get going, just want to shout out our sponsors at Artec Ventures, who've taken care of us very well. The goal at Artec Ventures is to collaborate closely with founders throughout all the investment and fundraising stages, turning their visions into successful companies. Since 2020, Artec Ventures has helped turn great ideas into profitable businesses that make an impact on industries, communities, and beyond. Artec is taking care of us, so thank you for sponsoring the pre-snap and all of our shows. Alex, we have a Super Bowl 45 rematch, which is the storyline today because realistically, in both of our opinions, going off of our talk before the show, this will not really be a competitive game.
No, I mean, the big storyline is Aaron Rodgers, Big Ben, which Big Ben's washed up and probably should have retired with Phillip Rivers last year. I don't know. Like, it's cool that this is the longest time between two matchups for two Super Bowl winning quarterbacks, like over 10 years. It's a fun storyline, and we haven't seen Aaron Rodgers beat up on the Steelers since Super Bowl 45. So hopefully we'll get some vintage Rodgers moments. Hopefully he'll do some things that make us think, oh, yeah, we like beating up on the Steelers, because he's had a broken collarbone the last time the Packers and Steelers have played, the last two times. So it's a fun storyline, but yeah, I don't think this will be a close game at all. The Steelers stink.
So I think the biggest storyline going into this Sunday afternoon matchup really is the injuries. For Green Bay, still no Kevin King, still no Elton Jenkins. So we're going to get more of the Yosh train at left tackle. So let's start on the offensive injury front with Elton Jenkins and MVS out. What worries you the most, given we still think this is going to be an easy Green Bay win? What worries you in this game and going forward?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, obviously, the Steelers have a pretty solid defense. A guy like TJ Watt is always fun to see, especially being a Wisconsin guy, but not so fun to see when you're cheering for the team that's playing against them, right? So you hope he doesn't do too much damage on that weaker left side. But I was overall pretty impressed with the offensive line for the most part last week. I think that was a really bright spot, and I think Aaron Rodgers echoed that sentiment throughout the week. He was impressed with Yosh, and he was impressed with Royce Newman, and he's impressed with Myers at center. Like, you really have a bunch of guys that have never played a ton or haven't played a ton of NFL games or snaps.
Oh, yeah.
And they're showing up. So I'm excited to see them with another week of preparation, knowing this is the group, and to see how they match up against the Steelers D. I completely agree with you, MJ, right? Like, this should be still a pretty solid offensive display for Green Bay, regardless of what the offensive line looks like, and I think that will be the case. So that would still worries me a little bit. Like, what if one guy goes down during the game? You get even weaker then. You regress even more for a group that was so strong a year ago, and now with so many question marks today. But after seeing them a week ago, I feel a little bit more confident. At the receiver front with MVS out, it is a blow, right? It's absolutely a blow. You lose your biggest deep threat, but I think it's replaceable, and maybe we'll see some Amari Rodgers. Maybe we'll see some Randall Cobb. We'll see more of them, plug in and try to fill that hole left behind by MVS. But, Equanimeous St. Brown is up there too. So he's active as well. So maybe at the very least, we'll see some EQ, which, the practice squad guy, one of my favorite players. A couple of years back, I thought he was due for several breakout seasons, never had him. So maybe we'll have a random breakout game today. But I think the depth is there, so you shouldn't be too worried about it. Obviously, you'd like to have MVS, but you can live without him for a week.
Honestly, Alex, I think the biggest benefit that MVS being out gives Green Bay is they're not going to get too deep ball happy. Because,
True.
in my opinion, still, even last week when they were much more committed to the running game, much more committed to their quick hitters, the screens, getting the ball to Devontae, who's had like 45% target share so far for the Packers, I still think Rodgers has been a little bit too much on the screw it. MVS is down there somewhere. So to me,
Sure.
I think this is a game where they might have been a little too willing to get into that. Obviously, I don't want MVS to be out. He's an incredible threat, very beneficial for the offense. But I think it is good to get a little bit more of maybe Amari Rodgers going, get Lazard going more, because we've seen MVS can be successful deep ball. Obviously, Adams is going to be the best receiver in the NFL. But MVS being out on a week where we're not even worried with him out, I think that could be beneficial to the rest of the offense to get everyone else going.
Yeah, it gets you to a level of comfortability. I mean, Devontae Adams is still there. Aaron Rodgers is still going to throw 60% of his balls in his direction. I mean, that's just kind of how it happens when those two are on the field together. And that's okay. It works. But if you want to see Aaron Rodgers get away from that offensively, today is not your day with MVS out. So you'll still see Devontae Adams making a majority of the plays. And then you'll have some sprinkles, as you mentioned, of Allen Lazard and maybe Randall Cobb or Amari Rodgers in there as well. So I'm excited to see what it looks like offensively, but I don't think it's a huge blow.
So real quick, before we move on to the defense, who's your offensive MVP for the day?
Well, Aaron Rodgers excluded, I assume, right?
Yes. That's the easy, boring pick.
It is. But I think that's the obvious answer. But aside from him, let's go with Bobby Tunyon. I think with MVS out, he'll probably see some more action his direction, and they'll scheme him in to the game plan a little bit more. So I'll go with Bobby Tunyon, Bobby Biceps, as we like to call him.
I think it's going to be Lazard. I know we talked about this before the show.
I would love it.
I think with MVS out, you're going to see a little bit more Lazard going deep, a little bit less of him being more of a pure pass blocker. Also, I assume you're watching the Bears-Lions game, so if anything interesting happens, feel free to let us know.
I'm actually not. I'm watching the Browns-Vikings game currently.
Oh, that's also
and I left my remote across the room, so at one point I may get up and get it.
Go for it. As long as it's NFC North related, none of us will be
Minnesota mad. Driving with 2:09 left, down by a touchdown. They're in Cleveland territory, so something to keep an eye on.
That's a little scary.
Yeah.
I tweeted earlier. I was like, "Hey Browns, do something, please." I don't need Minnesota.
Emoji, right?
Yes.
I don't know. Cleveland confuses me. They're a team that really I don't get, and I'm sorry to bring us off the rails here. That's what happens when I come back to game on, but the Vikings aren't 1-2 bad, I don't think, and we'll see that more as the season continues to roll on. But the Browns always have trouble finding their identity. That seems to be the case again this year. They might not be a playoff team, which is weird. With how good that offense is, that might not be a playoff team.
Before we get to anything else, you need to justify that, good sir.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think they win the division. I still think that's Baltimore's division to lose, right?
Okay.
Cincinnati doesn't look great, but they might sneak a win out against Cleveland in their series this year. They might sneak a couple other wins out that bring them down a notch. I just think Cleveland might end up being the 8th seed in the AFC, and we're all like, holy crap, how did that happen? Because that offense should be one of the best in the league, right? I mean, and that defense is clearly world-class. We saw it. Especially on display last week against Chicago. But it's like, I still can't figure them out, and that doesn't feel like a real contender to me. So that's a team that I think could miss the playoffs, but they probably won't, and this will be a total cold take, and they'll end up getting the first seed. Who knows?
Well, I can't wait to clip this and throw it at
very
you
early.
Very
early still.
But yeah, so on the defensive front for the Packers, Kevin King is still out. That really is the storyline. So we're going to get more of Jair and Eric Stokes as CB 1 and 2. So what do you think of that? Obviously, I believe Kevin King officially has a concussion now.
Concussion, is
the official diagnosis, which I think happened in the Detroit game at some point. Not really sure. So what do you think of Eric Stokes getting some more running time?
Well, I'll tell you the same thing I said last week, right? And what was initially an illness for Kevin King now turns out to be a concussion. Like you never want to see a guy go down,
Right.
but you also kind of want to see Eric Stokes on display, being that he is your first round pick, right? We didn't get to drool over our first round pick a year ago. He wasn't even active for a single game, right? So it's nice to kind of have that first round pick getting opportunities this early into the season. I think the expectation for a lot of Packer fans, including me before the season, was we'll see Eric Stokes sprinkled in, and he might take over as CB2 down the road further into the year.
Yeah.
Well, now you're getting him nice and early. I mean, it's what, week 4? So you're seeing him way earlier than you expected in a starting role for the second straight week. And I think he did solid against San Francisco. Chase Claypool out for Pittsburgh. So you're taking on either Juju or Deontay Johnson, whichever one lines up on across from him. But nonetheless, I think it's good reps. You're facing a good offense, a decent offense. I take that back. Not a very good offense in Pittsburgh, a decent offense with some tools, with some good receivers. So the real good reps for him, and I'm excited to see what he can do. Like I'm all for, right? If you're going to spend a first round pick on somebody, give them the opportunity when the opportunity arises. Kevin King's out. This is his opportunity. They're allowing him to step up and shine. And that's something I like to keep an eye on. But I don't even remember what your question was, MJ. I'm sorry.
No, it was answered perfectly.
Okay, good. What's your take there, right? I mean, Kevin King out, Eric Stokes, you're getting a good view at him. I'm very excited, and I'm not excited Kevin King's hurt, but I'm excited that Eric Stokes is getting the reps and that you're getting to see if Brian Gutekunst was right this year.
I agree 100%. And you can ask pretty much anybody who has listened to me talk in the last month. And I do not want Kevin King on the football field. Obviously, I don't want it in the way that it happened. But if this is how we get to Eric Stokes being our cornerback number 2 for the rest of the season, I will not complain. There were so many times during the 49ers game that I was watching and Eric Stokes played a ball, and I even tweeted out a couple times, if that was Kevin King, it would have been a 27-yard completion. Like, just the way he plays doesn't match up with the way the Packers want to play defense, especially with the way Joe Barry wants to play defense. So if you want to throw him in the slot, train him there for the rest of the year, honestly, I'm not mad at that. I don't love it because he's not the fastest guy anymore. He's lost some of that deep ball coverage, which was one of the only reasons he could even make up in his first couple of years, was when he got beat, he could catch up, which is what we see with Eric Stokes now. So if Kevin King can adjust and play well in the slot, I won't be mad at it. But in crunch time, if we only have 2 corners on the field specifically, I want it to be Jair and Eric Stokes. And I know it's only 3 weeks and it's really early to decide. But from everything I've seen so far, he has all of the intangibles, all of the talent that we thought always, every year, we thought this was what Kevin King could do. Eric Stokes is already doing it. He's already surpassed some of the best plays that I've seen Kevin King make.
Okay, so hold on. Let me cut you off and ask you this then. So let's say Kevin King returns next week.
Yes.
You want Eric Stokes starting at
I want Eric Stokes starting. If we have 3 DBs on the field, if we have 3 corners on the field, obviously the third one is going to be Kevin King. There's really nobody behind to cover. So if we have a game like against Tampa Bay or even Pittsburgh, where they're going to have Johnson, Juju, Claypool, they have a lot of good wide receivers. So if you have a team with a lot of good wide receivers, then I'm okay with King on their third best guy.
Yep.
But under no circumstances do I want Kevin King covering the number 2 on any team in the NFL.
Wow. Okay. I mean, it almost sounds like hatred for Kevin King as a football player is unbelievable. But I mean, it's warranted, and I think you echo what a lot of Packers fans think about Kevin King, right? You know, he clearly has cost the Packers games or situations in which they lost the game, especially with that NFC Championship game. There was other things that could have been done to prevent losing, but Kevin King was certainly a big part of one of those that might have been the most crucial. So I understand, and I do agree with you for the most part. I'd rather see Stokes than King. That's just how I feel right now. But it's happening at a good time if they're going to make that transition full time. You and I aren't on the sidelines. We aren't in the building.
Right.
We don't know for sure if they'll stick with Stokes, but we do know that they probably should. And it's happening at a good time that they get him on full display in the schedule. Green Bay's schedule gets really, really tough. And I'm sure you've talked about this before on both pre and post, right? I mean, there's that 5-game span there coming up in about a month where it goes at the Cardinals, at the Chiefs, home against the Seahawks, at the Vikings, home against the Rams. And then
that is rough.
And then you get the Bears at home, but that's probably still a tough game. Then you go on the road to Baltimore. So this schedule really toughens up, but the next couple of weeks are a lot nicer this week at home versus Pittsburgh. You go to Cincinnati. I think both of those teams stink. They're clearly the worst two teams in the AFC North. And then you go to Chicago, and I don't have the other game on. I don't know what their score is, but I watched the first quarter of the Bears game, and Justin Fields looked great. It actually looked like they schemed an offense for him today rather than they did last week. And then you play Washington and Green Bay to talk about this next 4-game stretch. You're allowed to figure some things out there, iron some things out there, and you're going to do that at cornerback. But the other thing that's really interesting about the timeline of how things have worked out this year for the Packers is this offseason was all about Rodgers versus Gutekunst, right?
Yes.
Everybody realized Gutekunst might not know exactly what he's doing, and maybe he's making a really bad call with Rodgers. But then his draft game started getting to call them to question.
Yeah.
Who has he been picking? Now, with the injuries that have occurred defensively, you have Jair, who was his first-round pick at 1 year. You have Rashawn Gary with Zadarius Smith getting back surgery this week, playing and starting for a long tenure, and then also Eric Stokes. So the only guy you're really not seeing is Jordan Love of his first-round picks. This is a prove-it defense for Brian Gutekunst as much as it is for Joe Barry. So that's what intrigues me these next couple of weeks.
So 2 things on that. Number 1, I really think going into that rough stretch, the Packers could be at 6-1. And so honestly, if you go into that horrendous stretch that you mentioned at 6-1, honestly, as long as you split it, the Packers are fine. I talked about this last week when Jacob was on the post game show. I don't really care about winning the NFC North. That's kind of given at this point.
It should be,
as long
as Rodgers is healthy, right?
Yes, as long as Rodgers is healthy, as long as Devontae Adams is healthy for the majority of the year, we should be perfectly fine. The only issue in my mind is with the teams in the NFC looking the way they are, specifically Tampa Bay and LA, we really need to win that game against the Rams because I do not want to be going into SoFi playing against the Rams. And number 2,
I don't either.
Especially this year, you really need to be the 1 seed. So do the Packers have a schedule that allows them to be the 1 seed? Probably not, unfortunately.
I don't think so this year. Yeah,
but if you go into that stretch at 6-1, that makes a much bigger difference. The only thing, in my opinion, that may hamper that is the other thing you brought up, which is Zadarius Smith having back surgery. And the biggest thing I've noticed is the lack of interior pressure with Zadarius Smith being out, because I don't think Packers fans and even a lot of analysts realize how much Zadarius Smith does inside. He lines up right next to Kenny Clark.
Yeah.
There were so many snaps last year where it was Preston Smith, Zadarius Smith, Kenny Clark, and Rashawn Gary, or some combination of that. And not having him, then you get guys like Tyler Lancaster and Dean Lowry, who are not pass rushing interior linemen. Nobody assumes they're going to rush the passer.
Nope.
But now they have to, and it just makes it very unfortunate for everyone involved.
No, that's a great point. I mean, Zadarius is a very good football player. Obviously, back surgery sounds a lot scarier than I'm getting. It is like the releases and some of the things I've heard and seen on Twitter and whatnot is this guy could be back in like a month, but I don't. It's back surgery.
I find that very hard to believe.
Like this could be an all year thing, and that's kind of the mindset I have with Zadarius. So we get Rashawn in the big role that a lot of us, and especially Jacob, as you referenced,
yes,
expects and thinks he deserves. And it's going to be fun to see him in these spots because that is a first-round pick, and you do need to. And I mean that's kind of the main way you hold your GM accountable. I mean, there's other ways, obviously, player management and free agency and whatnot.
Yeah,
but first-round draft picks are a very good way of measuring if your general manager is making the right calls. And to see Rashawn Gary and Eric Stokes on full display the next few weeks defensively, and potentially for the rest of the season in both cases, that's fun to me. And I like both of those guys. I liked both of those picks. The value at 12 with Rashawn will always be a debate, but I still like that he's a Packer at the end of the day. Yeah. So we'll see, MJ. Like I still trust this defense. They haven't proven they're good yet. And I'm hoping today is the day that they do. because Joe Barry's got a lot to prove. I mean, if this defense stinks all year, I think he's in Green Bay 1 year. I don't think they're afraid to say the way they started that season. Of course, that triggered a lot of overreaction.
Oh,
but
yeah.
Joe Barry's track record stinks. It's like the second worst in NFL history besides Adam Gase. And
that's saying a lot.
Exactly. Adam Gase burns everything he touches. And Joe Barry's defenses have pretty much the same track record. Like they're bottom of the barrel every time he's been a DC. So, but he's got some players, man. And if they can at least be competent enough to be middle of the pack, his job's safe. But if they're bottom of the barrel, 29, 30, 31, 32, in terms of, all the statistics that go into defensive stuff, right? Like points allowed and red zone opportunities and blah, 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 blah. If they're bottom of the barrel that like Joe Barry always has everywhere else he's been, I think he's canned, and rightfully so. So it's a prove-it year for Joe Barry, and he's got the pieces to have a good defense. And I think today's a good day, and the next 4 games really are a good way to say, all right, this defense is competent enough to not blow our leads, because the offense is obviously still top 5,
right?
At the least, if not top 3 or top 2. So we'll see. So
real quick, one little weird storyline that I want to mention before we get into some defensive keys today is the whole TJ Watt was on the board when the Packers drafted Kevin King, all of that. I get it. TJ Watt is a Wisconsin guy. It's half the reason everyone wanted JJ Watt this offseason. That was never going to happen either.
No.
Do you even care, Alex, about the TJ Watt versus Kevin King? Obviously, I wish it was TJ Watt, given my opinion on Kevin King that you've already heard. But, like, is that actually a thing? Should anyone actually care?
Well, I'm sorry that I'm not going to help you shut it down, because, yes, you should care. Look, I'm a Wisconsin guy. I live in Madison. Like, I love the Watt brothers. They're one of the coolest stories in the NFL. 3 brothers on National Football League teams for several years is ridiculous.
Yeah.
TJ Watt, who should have been the Defensive Player of the Year last year, he wasn't, right? Am I getting that wrong? I don't think he won it.
Wait.
Maybe he won it. Maybe I'm wrong. Regardless,
I'm pretty sure.
I'll look. Google it while I spiel. But yes, it should be a storyline, because I remember where I was that draft, and I know where I was that draft because I remember we had to wait until the end of the first round for the Packers to pick. They trade out of that pick and leave TJ Watt on the board, and I was very, very frustrated. I stormed out of where I was and went home for the night because I was so upset. I had to stay up late to wait for the Packers pick, and then B, watch them pass up on TJ Watt, because I knew he would be good. I didn't know if he'd be JJ level, which I think he's proving he is JJ level at his peak. I knew he would be good in the National Football League because he was so good at Wisconsin. And Wisconsin always has really good defenses. Even though they stink this year, they still have a really, really good defense. So I think we realized, yes, TJ had the talent, and he could absolutely be a great fit given the Packers' weaknesses that year. And then they traded back and got Kevin King. And I understand why some people are pissed off about that to this day, because it was clearly the wrong pick, and you're never going to prove that otherwise. Kevin King's time as a starter is coming to an end, as we discussed before, and he's probably not a Packer after this. Because they're going to be comfortable with Stokes.
Oh, for sure. Aaron Donald did win Defensive Player of the Year last year. It was not
TJ should have.
I disagree with that. That's a conversation for a different day.
You're right. It is.
But I do disagree with that.
Okay. Aaron Donald's the best defense player in the league. So I understand.
It's hard to vote against him.
Correct.
It's like voting against Rodgers or Mahomes for MVP. It's really hard to do most years.
Yep.
But we are playing a quarterback who barely has an elbow tonight. If the defense can't look good tonight, I really don't know what to tell Joe Barry or Packers fans. They are going to throw the ball 5 yards or fewer, and they are going to run the football. I don't know what else to tell you. So, Alex, what are you worried about going into this afternoon's game defensively?
Najee Harris should play a pretty big role in their offense, as you mentioned, and he's a really good running back, and he's young, and I think he's probably the top rookie at his position and will be all year. So I would be worried about, stopping the run. That seems to constantly be an issue with Green Bay's defense.
Usually.
And with Za'Darius out, with some of the other injuries defensively, I'm a little skeptical of how they're going to contain that. But this the Steelers offense isn't terribly hard to figure out. So
no,
I'm just worried they're going to allow them to stay in the ball game. That's the way I view it, right? They're going to allow Pittsburgh's offense to stay in the ball game because the offense for Green Bay really shouldn't be an issue. Yes, there will be times where they have to punt the football, but I think more times they will get points on the board. So we'll see. But I just want them to prove to us that, okay, you're competent against bad teams. Yeah. Last week I tweeted it. Steelers are a bad team. Final answer.
Yes.
They are a bad team. And they are not in the same. They are not on the same pedestal. They are not in the same level as Green Bay, and we should see that today. But it comes down to what happens defensively in my head. So if they can't stop the run, that concerns me. There are going to be times where Juju Smith-Schuster and Deontay Johnson just are flat out better than you.
Yeah,
that's okay, and we can come to expect that for what, 4 or 5 plays in total. Yeah. So stop the run, you win this game handedly, and that's what I'm worried about because I just when the Packers defense makes you comfortable is when they will then ruin you. So that's what we've come to learn, right? As Packers fans.
Yeah. No, I agree. The one thing that has worried me defensively so far is, in my opinion, I have not seen enough of Darnell Savage and Adrian Amos. Obviously,
they came on late last year.
Yes, they did. But they were the top-ranked safety group in the NFL last year, and
I didn't even know that, and that doesn't shock me at all.
Yes, they were. So obviously, take PFF with whatever grain of salt you want.
Yeah, right.
But they were the top duo of safeties in the NFL last year. So that's not just something that's the last few weeks of the season, the playoffs. That was an entire year performance, and I haven't seen that from them. The grades haven't seen that from them. So just the eye test, statistically, all of the analytics have not seen those two performing the way I would like. Obviously, a lot of that is going to be harmed by they just got destroyed by the Saints. So it's kind of hard to catch up from that. But even in the last 2 games, I haven't seen them making as big of a difference as I would have liked.
Sure.
So if you want turnovers, if you want a lot of that run stopping to occur, that's going to come from your safeties. That's going to come from some action from Darnell and from Adrian Amos. So I would like at least one of them to get involved going into this afternoon. I don't particularly care. And I also think, and I think you would agree with this, Alex, a lot of turnovers and things like that kind of build upon each other week to week within the defense. It's a culture type thing. I don't think the Packers are necessarily there yet as a defensive group. They're still trying to find that identity. So I don't think this is the week that happens, unfortunately, because it's too many quick hitters, too much of the running game today. But moving forward, that is the one thing that just concerns me a little bit. We know what we have everywhere else, but I have higher expectations for that group that have not, in my opinion, come to fruition yet.
No, I think that's completely fair. I think that's probably defensive back was the position group you're probably most confident in heading into the season outside of that CB2 spot, which now it seems like, MJ, you're very comfortable with that CB2 spot.
Oh, I am.
There. So I don't think it's anything to worry about necessarily, but you'd like to see more production, especially out of the 2 safeties. So I get it. I think that's fair criticism, and I won't disagree with it because those 2 should be maybe not Amos, but I think Savage, given where he's at in his career path, should probably be close to all-pro status.
Yes.
Especially on a crucial year for him. So I'm with you. Good call there.
So any other thoughts, comments, concerns before we get into a couple predictions?
Oh, prediction time almost. Yeah, no, I think don't worry about MVS today. Worry about him before it gets to that tough stretch. And I don't think he'll miss 4 games. So I don't think that is as big of a blow as maybe some of us think. He is the best deep threat the Packers have offensively, but I don't view that as the biggest blow in the world. It might not help by any means, but I don't think it'll hurt you as much as some people think. So cool the Jets on MVS being out. You saw it with Devontae several times last year in games that MVS in turn stepped up. I think you'll see the exact same thing, next man up mentality from the wide receiver group today. And as we've talked about for the last 20 minutes, I mean, this is a big day for the defense. So keep a close eye on them. Let's see what they do. And I'm sure you'll have plenty to react to come post game because they might let you down.
They might, but I think it'll be a happy post game. I think it'll be it'll still be a victorious one.
I think so too.
I'll leave it at that for the time being. Yes. So we're going to have post route after the game, about 30 minutes. I believe Mike Kawanu is going to be joining me. So that'll be entertaining as always.
Mike's the man. Love that.
Yes. He threw out some line about rubber ducky yellow helmets last week that had Jacob and I rolling on the floor. So that was always good. So Alex, thank you for joining us.
Of course.
Your prediction for Packers Steelers coming up in about 20 minutes.
Yeah. So the Packers, I don't know what it closed at. I think last time I saw it was 6-point favorites. I think
6.5.
I think they're going to cover, but barely, and probably not as big of a win as you and I think is doable. I just think the defense will let you down again, but not enough to lose the game. I'll take the Packers by 7 tonight, 34-27, which is a lot of points.
That's a lot of points.
And a lot of points for the Steelers. I think this is a high-scoring game, but the offense gets it done early, and it's not as close as the scoreboard indicates. I think they'll be comfortable in the fourth quarter. So I will take the Packers today to advance to 3-1 on the year at 34-27. And as I didn't take the low-hanging fruit, but I will now, I think you have a vintage Aaron Rodgers performance. It's his first game against the Steelers since Super Bowl 45, and we know what he did there. So I will take the Packers today, MJ.
Anytime I get to take Aaron Rodgers over Ben Roethlisberger is a happy day for me. So I'm going to take Green Bay Packers 31, just a little bit lower scoring than you. Green Bay Packers 31, Pittsburgh Steelers 21. I don't think they'll go super crazy. My big day is from Alan Lazard. Obviously, that implies a big day from Aaron Rodgers. So I agree from you. 10 years later, almost exactly, rematch Super Bowl 45. Packers come out easily. So, Alex, once again, thank you for joining us.
Of course, dude. Let
the good people know where to find you, what you do before we get out of here.
Yeah. I mean, I appreciate the plug, brother. So, yeah, I mean, Twitter's the only app I'm good at. I continue to realize that every day. I have an Instagram account at Strouf Sports that I just don't use. But
the internet is hard.
It is. And I love Twitter so much. So at Alex_Strouf on the screen, where you can go get me on Twitter. I'm on the radio 3 to 4 every day. So come hang out with me on ESPN Madison with my pal Jim Rutledge. We're talking football every day. So, I mean, it's good stuff. Cool. Thanks, MJ. Been a blast, bro.
Yes, sir. This has been the pre-snap at Game On Wisconsin. Once again, thank you to Artech Ventures, and I will see you guys 30 minutes after the game for the post route. Go Pack, go.